Every man alive has felt it. That moment where two paths appear in front of him. One is clear, comfortable, and well-traveled. It has been taken by most of the people he knows. It comes with social approval, predictable outcomes, and the quiet comfort of never having to justify your choices to anyone. The other path is different. It is harder. It is longer. It offers no guarantees and no applause in the early stages. Most people who see you to take it will question your judgment. Some will feel sorry for you. Some will wait for you to fail so they can point to your choice as the reason. And yet something in you pulls toward it. Something quiet and certain and completely immune to other people's opinions about what makes sense. That pull is not recklessness. It is not self-destruction dressed up as ambition. It is something far more specific and far more deliberate than either of those things. It is the Sigma male's understanding, sometimes conscious, sometimes instinctive, that the hard path and the path that leads somewhere worth going are almost always the same path. That the things which make a road difficult are precisely the things that make it valuable. That the obstacles, the discomfort, the uncertainty, and the extended timeline are not bugs in the system. They are the filtering mechanism. They are what ensures that the destination belongs only to the men who were willing to pay the full price to reach it. The easy path is crowded. It is crowded because it asks nothing of you that you have not already given. It requires no growth you have not already done, no discomfort you have not already survived. It is perfectly sized for the man you are right now. And that is exactly the problem. The man you are right now is not the man you need to become. And comfort never produces the man you need to become. Only the hard path does that. Only the road that demands more than you currently have forces you to develop what you currently lack. This video is about why the Sigma male chooses that road, not in spite of the difficulty. Because of it, we are going through 7 key points. Stay with me for the full video. Welcome to Silent Wise. Subscribe if this is where you belong. Let's get into it. The hard path is the only path that actually builds him. There is a fundamental truth about human development that most men understand intellectually, but almost none apply consistently. Growth only happens at the edge of your current capacity, not inside it. Not comfortably within what you already know how to do. At the edge. In the place where you are not sure you can manage what is being asked of you. In the situation where the outcome is genuinely uncertain and the possibility of failure is real. That edge is the only place where new capability gets built. Everything inside the edge is maintenance. Everything at the edge and beyond it is development. The easy path never puts you at the edge. By definition, it stays well within the boundaries of what you can already handle. It asks nothing of your untested capacities. It requires none of the skills you have not yet developed. And because it never asks for them, those capacities remain undeveloped. The man who spends years on the easy path arrives at the end of those years as fundamentally the same man who started them. Perhaps more comfortable, perhaps more settled, but not more capable. Not more resilient, not more equipped to handle the real challenges that life will eventually place in front of him regardless of which path he chose. The Sigma male chooses the hard path because he has understood something about the nature of his own development that most men have not. He understands that he is not just trying to reach a destination. He is trying to become a specific kind of man. And the kind of man he is trying to become cannot be produced by comfortable conditions. He requires pressure. He requires uncertainty. He requires the repeated experience of being asked for more than he currently has and choosing to find it anyway. The hard path is not a means to an end. It is the environment in which the man himself is constructed. Every difficult decision that most men avoid becomes, for the Sigma male, a building material. Every uncomfortable conversation he does not run from adds a layer to his character. Every failure he absorbs and continues through deepens a resilience that comfortable men will never develop. By the end of years on the hard path, he is not just further along toward his goal. He is a fundamentally different and more capable man than the version of himself who started. That transformation is the real destination. The external results are simply its evidence. The hard path eliminates the competition automatically. One of the most strategically significant things about the hard path is something most men never consider when they are standing at the fork deciding which way to go. The hard path is nearly empty, not because the destination it leads to is less desirable. In most cases, the destination is more desirable. That is why the difficulty exists, because something worth reaching tends to require significant cost to reach. The path is empty, because most men will not pay that cost. They see the difficulty, they assess the discomfort and the uncertainty and the timeline, and they choose the easier alternative. And in doing so, they remove themselves from competition for everything the hard path leads to. This is the Sigma male's quiet competitive advantage. He does not have to outperform a crowd of equally committed men to reach where he is going. He has to outlast the smaller number who started the hard path before giving up, and outcommit the even smaller number who are still on it. The crowd sorted itself out at the beginning. The men who needed guaranteed outcomes chose differently. The men who needed social approval chose differently. The men who could not tolerate extended uncertainty chose differently. By the time the hard path reaches the point where its destination becomes visible, only the men who were genuinely built for it are still present. Most competition in life is not actually about raw talent or intelligence. It is about willingness to sustain effort through discomfort over an extended period without the reassurance of visible progress. The vast majority of men cannot do this, not because they are weak in some absolute sense, but because they were never trained to tolerate the specific combination of difficulty, uncertainty, and delayed reward that the hard path requires. The Sigma male, by choosing and staying on the hard path, enters a different tier of competition, one where the field is far thinner and where his consistency separates him from the men who had equal talent but less tolerance for the cost. This is not something he announces. He does not take the hard path to signal toughness to observers. He takes it because he has looked clearly at where each path leads and made a rational calculation about which destination is worth the cost of which journey. The elimination of competition is not the goal. It is simply what happens when you commit to a level of difficulty that most men will not sustain. The hard path builds a relationship with failure that most men never develop. Failure is the thing that most men spend the majority of their energy trying to avoid. Not just the experience of failing, but the possibility of it, the risk of it, the exposure to the judgment that follows it. And this avoidance shapes the entire architecture of their lives in ways they often do not recognize. They choose paths and careers and relationships and ambitions that are sized to what they are already confident they can handle, not because those things represent what they actually want, but because they represent the range within which failure seems unlikely. They build their lives inside the boundaries of what feels safe, and then they wonder why those lives feel small. The Sigma male on the hard path has a completely different relationship with failure, because the hard path makes failure inevitable, not as the final outcome, but as a regular feature of the journey. When you are operating at the edge of your capacity, in conditions of genuine uncertainty, toward goals that are not guaranteed, you will fail at things along the way. Strategies will not work. Plans will need to be revised. Efforts will produce disappointing results. Timelines will be wrong. This is not exceptional bad luck. It is the normal texture of any genuinely ambitious path. And the man who chose the hard path with clear eyes knew this going in. What develops through repeated experiences of failure on the hard path is something that cannot be acquired any other way. A working, tested, functional relationship with failure that removes its power to stop you. The man who has failed and continued knows something the man who avoided failure does not. He knows that failure is not terminal. He knows the specific feeling of failing and the specific experience of absorbing it and getting up and adjusting and continuing. He has the evidence from his own life that failure does not end the story. It is simply information, expensive sometimes, painful often, but information nonetheless, and information can be used. This relationship with failure is one of the most durable advantages a man can possess. The man who fears failure is controlled by that fear in ways he often does not see. He makes defensive decisions. He avoids risks that could produce extraordinary returns because the downside is too threatened to his self-image. The Sigma male who has built a functional relationship with failure through the repeated experience of it on the hard path is not controlled this way. He can take the risks that matter because the outcome that most men find intolerable is simply something he has already survived before. The hard path produces standards that become non-negotiable. Something happens to a man who has spent significant time on the hard path. His standards change. Not the standards he performs for other people. His internal standards, the ones that govern what he will and will not accept from himself, from his work, from her relationship, and from the situations he allows himself to remain in. These standards rise to the level of what the hard path demanded of him. And once they are set at that level, they cannot be lowered without a fundamental compromise of his identity. He has become a man who operates at a certain standard. Anything below it feels wrong in a way he cannot ignore. This is one of the less visible but most important transformations that the hard path produces. The man who has consistently chosen difficulty, who has repeatedly done the harder thing when the easier thing was available, who has built his life around a standard of effort and honesty and commitment that most people around him do not share. That man has calibrated his internal compass to a different setting. He cannot unknowingly slip below that setting because the gap between where he is and where his standard sits is immediately and uncomfortably apparent to him. These elevated standards then function as a filtering system for everything in his life: the work he accepts, the people he spends time with, the commitments he makes, the situations he tolerates. All of it gets filtered through a standard that was built on the hard path and cannot survive below it. This is why the Sigma male's life tends to become more focused and more selective over time, rather than more scattered and more accommodating. He is not becoming arrogant. He is becoming aligned with what his standards require. And his standards now require things that only people and work and environments of genuine quality can provide. The men who stayed on the easy path do not develop these standards because the easy path never demanded them. Their calibration stays at the level of what is comfortable and socially acceptable. Nothing wrong with that as a personal choice. But it means they remain available to things that the Sigma male, having set his internal standard higher through sustained difficulty, simply cannot go back to. The hard path does not just take you somewhere different. It makes you into someone who can only go certain places. And those places are exactly where he was trying to get. The hard path forces clarity about what actually matters. Comfort is one of the most effective obscurers of truth that exists. When a man is comfortable, when his basic needs are met with minimal friction, when his social environment is stable and familiar, when nothing is pressing on him hard enough to require real examination, he can go years without confronting the most important questions about his own life. What does he actually want? What does he actually value? What kind of man does he actually intend to be? What is he actually doing with the one life he has been given? Comfort makes it possible to indefinitely defer these questions because the absence of discomfort feels enough like satisfaction to suppress the urgency of asking them. The hard path removes this deferral. When you are under genuine pressure, when resources are limited, and the margin for distraction is thin, and the cost of misallocating your energy is immediately apparent, you find out very quickly what actually matters to you and what does not. The things you thought you valued but were actually just comfortable with get revealed as inessential. The things that survive the pressure and remain important to you even when everything is hard are the things that actually define you. This clarity is not pleasant in the way that comfort is pleasant, but it is far more useful than any amount of comfortable ambiguity. The Sigma male on the hard path develops this clarity over time through the simple mechanism of sustained pressure. He cannot afford to spend significant energy on things that do not matter because the hard path demands too much of his real resources to allow for much waste. Every month that passes in difficult conditions sharpens his understanding of what he is actually doing this for. The vision gets more specific. The priorities become more obvious. The things he was doing out of habit or social obligation or vague aspiration fall away because they cannot survive honest scrutiny under pressure. What remains after that process of elimination is something genuinely valuable. A man who knows exactly what he wants, exactly why he wants it, and exactly what he is willing to do to reach it. That clarity is rarer than talent. It is rarer than intelligence. Most men never achieve it because the comfortable path never forced them to. The hard path does not give you the option of remaining unclear. It demands that you know what you are doing and why. And in doing so, it gives you the kind of direction that comfortable men spend their whole lives searching for without ever finding. The hard path creates a life that cannot be taken away. There are two kinds of success. The first kind is built on external conditions, on a job that can be eliminated, a market that can shift, a relationship that can end, a reputation that can be damaged by circumstances outside your control, a lifestyle that depends on the continuation of conditions you did not create and cannot guarantee. This kind of success is real while the conditions support it. And for long stretches, it can feel completely solid. But it has a fragility built into its foundation that only reveals itself when those external conditions change. And external conditions always change eventually. The second kind of success is built on internal foundations, on skills that live in the man himself, on character that was tested and held, on judgment that was developed through experience, on resilience that was built through repeated exposure to difficulty and recovery. This kind of success is not dependent on external conditions in the same way. The skill set goes wherever the man goes. The character does not disappear when circumstances shift. The judgment that was built through years of navigating difficulty becomes more valuable precisely when conditions become difficult again. It is self-contained, portable, and nearly indestructible. The hard path builds the second kind of success, not because difficulty is inherently noble, but because the specific things that difficulty develops, real skills, genuine resilience, tested judgment, deep self-knowledge, are the things that constitute a life that cannot be dismantled by outside forces. The man who built everything on comfortable conditions has little defense when those conditions change. The man who built everything through difficulty has paradoxically been prepared by the very thing that threatened him. This is why the Sigma male on the hard path is not just building toward a specific outcome. He is building a version of himself that can rebuild from any starting point, in any condition, without losing the essential elements of what makes him who he is. That capability is the ultimate insurance against the kind of catastrophic loss that men who built on comfortable foundations are always vulnerable to. You cannot take away a man's judgment. You cannot repossess his character. You cannot eliminate the resilience that years of chosen difficulty installed in him. The hard path builds things that belong to the man completely and permanently. No external circumstance can change that. The hard path is the separation. The result is the proof. Everything comes back to this. Every decision to take the harder road, every morning of discipline nobody witnessed, every failure absorbed and built upon, every standard held when it would have been easier to let it slip, every year of working while others performed, every uncomfortable truth faced instead of avoided, all of it was accumulating toward a single outcome that eventually becomes impossible to dispute. The separation. The visible, undeniable gap between where the Sigma male is and where the men who chose differently ended up. This is not a gap measured only in external success, though external results are often part of it. It is a gap in the quality of the man himself. Sigma male who has spent years on the hard path is operating from a depth of capability, clarity, resilience, and self-knowledge that simply does not exist in the man who spent those same years in comfort. You can see it in how he handles pressure, in how he makes decisions, in the quality of what he produces, in the way he carries himself when things go wrong, in the consistency of his standards when everyone around him is compromising theirs. These are not performances. They are the direct output of years of choices that built the man from the inside out. The men who chose the easy path are not bad men. They are not failures in any simple sense. Many of them are happy with the lives they built. But they are not the same as the man who chose the hard path consistently over years. They cannot be. The hard path produces things that the easy path categorically cannot. Not because of some mystical quality of difficulty, but because of the simple, mechanistic truth that the capacities you develop are determined by the demands you place on yourself. Demand little and develop little. Demand much and develop accordingly. The Sigma male demanded much of himself. He chose the harder road when the easier one was available. He maintained that choice through seasons of doubt and discomfort and apparent stagnation. And he arrived somewhere that the men who chose differently cannot reach, not because he is more gifted, but because he is more built. Built by the path itself. Built by every hard thing he chose to walk through instead of around. That is the separation. The hard path created it. And no amount of catching up on the easy path will close it. That is exactly why he chose it. 7 points. 7 layers of why the Sigma male chooses the hard path, and why that choice creates a separation that compounds over time into something that cannot be disputed, cannot be replicated quickly, and cannot be taken away. The hard path builds him when nothing else would. It eliminates competition automatically. It builds a relationship with failure that removes its power over him. It produces standards that become non-negotiable. It forces clarity about what actually matters. It creates a life built on foundations that external conditions cannot destroy. and it produces a separation between him and the men who chose differently that becomes the proof of everything he was doing while no one was watching. This is not about suffering for its own sake. It is not about making life harder than it needs to be. It is about one clear-eyed understanding that the Sigma male arrived at through observation or through experience. The easy path is comfortable, but it leads nowhere he actually wants to go. And the moment that understanding lands fully, the choice of path stops being difficult. It becomes obvious, not easy to walk, but obvious to choose. If you are on the hard path right now, if you are in the middle of something that is costing you more than it has returned so far, do not mistake the cost for evidence that you are wrong. The cost is evidence that you are on the right road. Everything worth reaching has a price. The hard path is simply the honest version of that truth. This is Silent Wise. If this video added something real to your day, share it with one man who is on the hard path and needs to be reminded why he chose it. Subscribe and stay with us. The path continues. And before you go, one question to carry with you today. What is the hard thing you have been avoiding that you already know you need to choose? You already know the answer. The only question is when you decide to stop avoiding it. This is Silent Wise. Stay silent. Stay on the path. Stay dangerous.